The massive arena stretched out like a metallic crater beneath three crimson suns, its walls rising so high they seemed to pierce the alien sky. Thousands of beings from across the galaxy filled the tiered seats, their various forms creating a writhing mass of scales, tentacles, and crystalline bodies. The air hummed with excited chittering, growling, and electronic pulses that served as communication for species too alien for human comprehension. At the center of this cosmic coliseum sat a simple metal cage, barely large enough for a grown human to stand upright. Inside, curled in one corner, was 8-year-old Marcus Chen. His small frame shook with each thunderous roar from the crowd, and tears had long since dried on his dirt-streaked face. The blue jumpsuit he wore was torn and stained from weeks of captivity aboard various alien vessels. High above in the royal viewing box, Overlord Vexhai observed the scene with satisfaction. His serpentine body coiled around an ornate throne, while his 6 arms gestured dramatically to his assembled court. The Overlord species, the Zephyrians, had ruled this sector of space for over a millennium, and their appetite for brutal entertainment was legendary throughout the known galaxy. "Behold, my loyal subjects," Vexhai's voice boomed through the arena's translation systems, reaching every ear, sensor, and communication organ present. "Today we witness the feeding of Great Scarmoth, our most prized hunter. This pathetic human spawn was captured during our recent raid on the farming colony of New Terra." The crowd's excitement reached a fever pitch. Holographic displays around the arena showed close-up images of Marcus, broadcasting his terror to every corner of the massive structure. Betting pools opened across dozens of alien networks, with odds heavily favoring a feeding time of less than 30 seconds. Marcus had stopped trying to understand what was happening to him days ago. He remembered his parents' small farm on New Terra, the way his mother sang while tending to their crops, how his father taught him to identify constellations in the night sky. He remembered the day the ships came, dark crescents that blotted out the sun. He remembered running, hiding, watching his parents try to fight with nothing but farming tools against beings with weapons that turned matter into light. The cage began to descend into the arena floor on a mechanical platform. Marcus pressed himself against the bars, looking up at the thousands of alien faces staring down at him. Some had eyes like burning coals, others had no eyes at all, but seemed to perceive him through other means. A few appeared almost friendly until they opened mouths filled with rows of razor-sharp teeth. "The human child represents everything weak about their species," Vexhai continued his commentary, his forked tongue flicking out to taste the air thick with anticipation. "No natural weapons, no armor, no special abilities. They are soft, vulnerable creatures who spread across the galaxy like a disease, thinking their technology can protect them from the natural order." A massive gate on the opposite side of the arena began to rise with a grinding mechanical shriek. From the darkness beyond came a sound that made even the bloodthirsty crowd fall silent. It was a roar that seemed to come from the very depths of nightmare, a sound that spoke of hunger that had never been satisfied and rage that burned like a dying star. Scarmoth emerged into the arena's harsh lighting, and several of the more sensitive species in the audience actually fainted. The creature stood 12 feet tall at its shoulders, its body a twisted amalgamation of muscle, bone, and metallic implants. Its hide was a mottled gray-black, scarred from countless battles in arenas across the galaxy. 6 legs ended in claws the size of human torsos, and its elongated skull housed jaws capable of crushing starship hull plating. The beast's 4 eyes, each the size of dinner plates, immediately locked onto the cage containing Marcus. Biorhythm monitors throughout the arena went wild as the creature's heart rate spiked with predatory excitement. Its tail, tipped with a bone spike that had been enhanced with neural interfaces, lashed behind it as it began its approach. Marcus stared at the approaching nightmare and felt something strange happen inside his chest. The fear was still there, cold and sharp, but alongside it came something else. It was a warmth that started small, like a candle flame, but began to grow. He thought about his father's words the night before the attack, when they had sat together watching the stars. "You know what makes humans special, Marcus," his father had said, ruffling his son's dark hair. "It's not that we're the strongest or the fastest, it's that we never give up. When everything looks impossible, when the whole universe is against us, we find a way. That's what humans do." The cage reached the arena floor with a metallic clang. Scarmoth circled the small enclosure like a shark, its massive head lowering to examine its prey. The creature's breath came in hot, sulfurous clouds that made Marcus cough. Up close, he could see the neural implants that dotted the beast's skull, technological enhancements that made it even deadlier than nature had intended. Vexhai raised one of his 6 arms, and the arena fell silent except for the heavy breathing of the massive predator. "Let the feeding begin," he announced, and the cage door swung open with an automated click. Scarmoth's roar shook dust from the arena's highest reaches. The creature's massive form tensed as it prepared to lunge forward and end this spectacle in the traditional spray of blood and terror. The crowd leaned forward in anticipation, some aliens recording the moment for later entertainment. But Marcus did something that no prey animal had ever done in this arena's blood-soaked history. Instead of running or cowering, he stood up. His small frame seemed impossibly tiny compared to the mountain of muscle and fury before him, but he stood nonetheless. The warmth in his chest had grown into something fierce and bright, something that pushed back against the fear. "Hey," Marcus said, his young voice carrying clearly in the sudden quiet. The translation systems, designed to handle any form of communication, processed his words and broadcast them throughout the arena. "Hey, big guy." Scarmoth paused, its massive head tilting slightly. In all its years of arena combat, no prey had ever addressed it directly. The creature's 4 eyes focused on the small human with something approaching confusion. Marcus took a step forward, then another. He was close enough now that the creature's breath washed over him like a furnace wind. Close enough to see the scars that crisscrossed its hide, evidence of pain that had been inflicted for the entertainment of others. Close enough to see something in those 4 eyes that the crowd above could never have noticed. Intelligence, pain, and something else that Marcus, in his 8-year-old wisdom, immediately recognized: loneliness. The arena held its collective breath as the small human child reached out with one tiny hand toward the most feared predator in this sector of space. Betting pools crashed as odds calculators tried to process this unprecedented behavior. In the royal box, Overlord Vexhai leaned forward, his serpentine body coiling with tension. Marcus's fingertips made contact with Scarmoth's scarred snout, and something happened that would be talked about in bars and meeting places across the galaxy for generations to come. The massive creature's eyes closed, and it let out a sound that was not a roar of fury or hunger. It was a whimper. The silence in the arena stretched like a taut wire ready to snap. Thousands of alien spectators stared in disbelief as the small human child continued to stroke the snout of the galaxy's most feared arena predator. Scarmoth had not moved, had not attacked, had not done anything except close its massive eyes and lean slightly into the gentle touch. Marcus felt tears running down his cheeks, but they were not tears of fear anymore. Looking into those 4 enormous eyes, he had seen something that the crowd above could never understand. This creature was not a monster. It was a prisoner, just like him. "You're scared too, aren't you?" Marcus whispered, his voice so soft that only Scarmoth could hear it beneath the shocked murmuring of the crowd. "They hurt you and made you hurt others, but you don't really want to, do you?" The great beast's eyes opened, and for a moment, Marcus saw past the implants and the scars to something deeper. Scarmoth had been taken from its home world as a cub, surgically enhanced, conditioned through pain and starvation to be a killer. For 15 years, it had known nothing but the roar of crowds demanding blood and the electric agony of neural punishment when it showed any sign of mercy. In the royal viewing box, Overlord Vexhai slammed one of his 6 fists against his throne. "What is this creature waiting for?" he hissed to his court. "Activate the pain stimulators, force it to feed." A technician, a spider-like being with 12 nimble fingers, hesitated at the control panel. "My lord, the neural interfaces are responding, but the creature is resisting the commands. This has never happened before." Below in the arena, Marcus had wrapped his small arms around as much of Scarmoth's massive head as he could reach. The creature's breathing had slowed, and the rage-filled tension in its muscles was melting away. For the first time in its adult life, Scarmoth was experiencing something it had forgotten existed: kindness. The neural implants in the beast's skull began to spark and smoke as conflicting signals fought for control. Vexhai's technicians were sending increasingly powerful pain pulses, trying to drive the creature into its programmed feeding frenzy. But something stronger was fighting back, something the Zephyrians had never encountered in all their centuries of arena entertainment. The human capacity for empathy was literally overriding alien technology. Marcus felt the creature shudder as waves of artificial pain washed through its nervous system. The implants were designed to cause agony whenever the beast showed any behavior that was not aggressive. "They're hurting you," Marcus said, his young voice filled with an anger that surprised him. "They're hurting you right now, aren't they?" Scarmoth's eyes opened again, and this time Marcus saw something new flickering in their depths. The creature turned its massive head toward the viewing box where Vexhai sat, and for the first time in 15 years, it looked at its captors not as masters to be obeyed, but as enemies to be destroyed. "My lord," the spider technician chittered nervously. "The creature's biorhythms are spiking beyond all parameters. The neural interface is burning out. If we continue, we might lose control entirely." "Then send in the shock troops," Vexhai snarled. "Stun both the creature and the human. We'll start again with fresh subjects." But it was already too late. Marcus stepped back from Scarmoth and looked up at the thousands of alien faces staring down at them. The fear that had paralyzed him was completely gone now, replaced by something that burned bright and clean in his chest. His father had been right. Humans never gave up, and they never abandoned their friends. "You want a show?" Marcus called out, his 8-year-old voice carrying clearly through the arena's acoustics. "You want to see what humans are really like?" He turned to Scarmoth, who was watching him with an intelligence that the crowd was only beginning to comprehend. "You want to be free?" Marcus asked. "Really free?" The great beast's answer was a roar that shook the arena to its foundations. But this was not the roar of a programmed killer. This was the roar of a creature that had just remembered what it meant to choose its own actions. Armed guards were already pouring into the arena from multiple entrances, their energy weapons crackling with deadly light. Overhead, the crowd was panicking as they realized that their entertainment had transformed into something far more dangerous. But Marcus was not watching the guards or listening to the screams of the audience. He was looking at the control booth where Vexhai's technicians were frantically trying to regain control of their prize fighter. The booth was protected by energy shields, accessible only through heavily guarded passages. Impossible to reach for any ground-based attacker, unless that attacker could fly. "Can you jump that high?" Marcus asked Scarmoth, pointing up at the booth. The creature's lips pulled back in what might have been a smile, revealing teeth the size of sword blades. The neural implants that had controlled its behavior were sparking and failing, but the physical enhancements to its muscles and reflexes remained fully functional. Scarmoth had been engineered to be the perfect arena fighter. That engineering was about to be turned against its creators. The great beast crouched low, its 6 powerful legs coiling like springs. Marcus scrambled onto its back, grabbing hold of the thick hide between its shoulders. The first energy blasts from the approaching guards splashed harmlessly against Scarmoth's armored skin. "Hold on, little human," Scarmoth spoke for the first time, its voice a deep rumble that the translation systems had to strain to process. The neural implants had suppressed its ability to speak for so long that even the creature had forgotten it could communicate. "We go to freedom now." The jump was a thing of beauty and terror. Scarmoth's enhanced muscles launched them 60 feet straight up, soaring over the shocked guards and panicked crowd members. Marcus felt his stomach drop as they flew through the air, the arena spinning below them like a deadly carnival ride. They landed directly on the energy shield protecting the control booth, and Scarmoth's claws, enhanced with molecular sharp edges, tore through the supposedly impenetrable barrier like tissue paper. The spider technician screeched in terror and scrambled for an emergency exit, but there was nowhere to run. Marcus slid down from Scarmoth's back and walked calmly to the control panel. The symbols were completely alien, but human children had been playing with electronic devices since before they could walk. The basic principles were always the same: power sources, control circuits, safety switches. "Which one controls the barriers around the other cages?" Marcus asked Scarmoth. The great beast studied the panel for a moment, then pointed with one massive claw to a series of crystalline switches. "Those cages hold others like me," Scarmoth rumbled. "Creatures taken from their homes, made to fight for the pleasure of these monsters." Marcus began flipping switches, and throughout the arena complex, the sounds of breaking chains and opening gates echoed like a symphony of liberation. The creatures held in the lower levels were not all as intelligent as Scarmoth, but they all understood freedom when they felt it. Below in the arena, chaos reigned supreme. The crowd was stampeding for the exits while guards tried desperately to maintain some kind of order. Energy weapons fired in all directions as creatures that had been prisoners moments before rampaged through their former captors. But the real shock was yet to come. Marcus found what he was looking for at the center of the control panel: a master communication array that connected to every ship in the system, every outpost, every corner of Zephyrian space. His fingers danced over the alien controls, and suddenly his young face appeared on screens across 3 star systems. "My name is Marcus Chen," he said, his 8-year-old voice carrying to millions of beings across the galaxy. "I'm from New Terra, and these aliens killed my parents and brought me here to die for their entertainment." The transmission was being picked up by human ships, by alien vessels, by monitoring stations throughout known space. Marcus looked directly into the camera with eyes that held no fear, only determination. "But here's what they didn't understand about humans," he continued. "We don't just fight for ourselves. We fight for everyone who can't fight back. We make friends in the strangest places. And when you hurt someone we care about, when you think you can use us for your sick games..." Behind him, Scarmoth's massive form loomed like a mountain of muscle and fury. Around them, the sounds of revolution echoed through the arena complex as dozens of enslaved creatures tasted freedom for the first time in years. "We don't just survive," Marcus said, his words carrying across the galaxy like a declaration of war. "We make sure you never hurt anyone ever again." The transmission cut to static as Zephyrian forces finally managed to destroy the communication array, but it was far too late. Marcus Chen's message had already spread across the Galactic network like wildfire. Within hours, it was being broadcast on every civilized world, translated into thousands of languages, and discussed in emergency sessions of governing bodies throughout known space. The Human Colonial Council convened in emergency session aboard the diplomatic station Unity Prime. Admiral Sarah Torres, a woman whose career had been built on preventing interstellar conflicts, found herself planning the largest military operation in human history. The holographic display before her showed the Zephyrian system surrounded by red warning markers. "Intelligence suggests the boy is still alive," reported Commander Hayes, the Council's chief military advisor. Long-range sensors detected massive power fluctuations from the arena complex. Whatever he did in there, it caused significant damage to their systems. Admiral Torres studied the tactical readouts with grim determination. "How long to mobilize the fleet?" 18 hours for a full response, Hayes replied. "But ma'am, the Zephyrians have territorial agreements with half the galaxy. If we attack them directly, we could be looking at a war with multiple species." Torres turned to study the replay of Marcus's transmission for the dozenth time. She saw a child who had lost everything but found the strength to stand up to monsters. More importantly, she saw what that child had accomplished with nothing but courage and compassion. "Commander, send a message to every human colony, every trading post, every exploration ship in this sector," she ordered. "That boy didn't start a war. He started something much more dangerous to our enemies. He started a revolution." Back on the arena world, Marcus and Scarmoth had barricaded themselves in the control tower as Zephyrian forces regrouped for a final assault. The great beast was wounded, energy burned scoring its hide from multiple firefights, but its spirit burned brighter than ever. Around them, the arena complex had become a battlefield where enslaved creatures fought alongside each other for the first time in their lives. "They bring more soldiers," Scarmoth rumbled, peering through a shattered window at the troop transports landing outside. "Heavy weapons. This time they mean to end us." Marcus was working frantically at a secondary control panel, trying to understand the alien technology through pure intuition and desperation. His small fingers flew over controls that had been designed for species with completely different hand configurations. But somehow, he was making progress. "Almost got it," he muttered, the way children do when they're absolutely focused on a problem. "There has to be a way to reach the other facilities. They can't have just one arena. They probably have hundreds of places like this." Scarmoth's 4 eyes widened as he understood what the human child was attempting. "Little brother, if you can reach the network nodes, you could open every cage in Zephyrian space. But the power requirements would destroy this entire facility. We would not survive." Marcus looked up at his enormous friend, and Scarmoth saw something in the child's eyes that he was beginning to recognize as uniquely human. Not the absence of fear, but the presence of something stronger than fear. Purpose. "My dad used to say that the most important thing wasn't living forever," Marcus said quietly. "It was making sure your life counted for something. How many creatures are trapped in places like this?" "Thousands," Scarmoth replied. "Perhaps tens of thousands. Taken from their families as I was. Made to fight. Made to kill. Made to forget who they were." The sound of heavy footsteps echoed through the tower as assault troops began their final advance. Energy weapons charged with high-pitched whines, and the air filled with the mechanical clicking of advanced combat gear. Marcus found the control he was looking for, a master override that would simultaneously access every arena facility in Zephyrian space and release every safety protocol at once. The system would overload spectacularly, creating an energy cascade that would be visible from orbit. But it would also send a liberation signal to thousands of imprisoned creatures across dozens of worlds. "Scarmoth," Marcus said, placing his small hand on the creature's massive forearm. "Thank you for being my friend." The great beast's eyes glistened with something that might have been tears. "Thank you for reminding me what friendship means, little brother." Marcus activated the override. The effect was instantaneous and galaxy-wide. On Zephyrian Arena, worlds throughout their empire, cage doors burst open simultaneously. Creatures that had been enslaved for decades suddenly found themselves free, and their first instinct was not to run, but to remember what had been done to them. The masters who had profited from their pain discovered that revenge was a universal concept. The arena world's power grid overloaded in a spectacular cascade of light and energy. The control tower where Marcus and Scarmoth waited was at the center of an electrical storm that turned the sky into a canvas of blue and white fire. But even as the building shook apart around them, Marcus smiled. He had kept his promise to his father. His life had counted for something. The rescue ships arrived 3 days later. The human colonial fleet, supported by vessels from 6 other species who had been quietly disgusted by Zephyrian practices for decades, found a transformed world. The arena was a crater of melted metal and crystal, but the surrounding countryside was filled with creatures who had chosen to stay and build something better than what had been destroyed. Admiral Torres led the search team that found Marcus and Scarmoth in the ruins of the control tower. They were unconscious but alive, protected by the great beast's massive body from the worst of the collapse. When Marcus finally woke up in the medical bay of the flagship, the first thing he saw was Scarmoth's enormous head looking down at him with concern. "Did it work?" Marcus asked weakly. "See for yourself," Admiral Torres said, helping him to a viewing port. Outside, the space around the former arena world was filled with ships. Not just human vessels, but craft from dozens of species who had heard Marcus's transmission and come to see what a human child could accomplish with nothing but courage and friendship. Some had come to offer aid, others had come to learn, a few had come to join what was already being called the Liberation Fleet. But it was the sight on the planet's surface that truly amazed Marcus. Where the arena had once stood, construction crews from multiple species were working together to build something unprecedented. Not another arena, not a monument to conquest, but a school. A place where young beings from across the galaxy could learn that there were alternatives to violence and oppression. Scarmoth, whose real name they learned was Deep Thunder of Home Valleys, chose to stay and teach at the new school. His lessons were simple but profound. That strength without compassion was meaningless, that true courage meant protecting those weaker than yourself, and that friendship could bridge any gap between different species. Marcus returned to human space as a hero, but he never forgot the lessons he learned in that arena. As he grew older, he became a diplomat and explorer, always looking for ways to build bridges between different forms of life. He established the Chen Foundation, which worked to identify and shut down exploitation operations throughout the galaxy. The Zephyrian Empire never recovered from what became known as the Children's Revolution. Without their arena networks to provide revenue and maintain their reputation for brutality, their political influence crumbled. Many Zephyrians embraced the changes, discovering that cooperation and mutual respect were far more rewarding than domination and cruelty. But perhaps the most important change was in how the galaxy viewed humanity. Before Marcus Chen, humans were seen as a relatively weak species that compensated for their physical limitations with technology and aggression. After Marcus Chen, every species in known space understood that humans possessed something far more dangerous than weapons or ships. They possessed the ability to see the potential for good in even the most unlikely places, and the courage to act on that vision regardless of the cost to themselves. Years later, when Marcus was an old man with grandchildren of his own, he would often visit the school that had been built on the ruins of the arena. The students there came from hundreds of different worlds and represented dozens of species, but they all learned the same fundamental lesson, that the universe was vast and often cruel, but it was also filled with opportunities for kindness, friendship, and hope, and that sometimes the most important revolutions began not with armies or weapons, but with a single act of compassion between unlikely friends. The bronze statue that stood in the school's central courtyard showed a small human child reaching out to touch the snout of an enormous creature, both of them captured forever in that moment when fear transformed into friendship. The inscription beneath it was simple: "In memory of all the cages that were opened, and all the friendships that opened them." The galaxy never forgot the lesson of Marcus Chen and Deep Thunder of Home Valleys. That real strength came not from the ability to destroy, but from the courage to understand. That the most powerful force in the universe was not gravity or nuclear fusion, but the simple human refusal to let cruelty have the final word. And that sometimes the smallest hands could reach the farthest and accomplish the impossible.